Everybody, welcome to Images Crossover Panel. I am Megan Hutchison, and I am here to introduce the teams that brought you Ghost Fleet, Paybacks, Buzzkill, Redneck, Baby Teeth, Interceptor, Guardians of the Galaxy, Thanos, and God Country. And they are joined once again to create a new project for Image called Crossover. So I want to introduce Donnie Cates, Jeff Shaw, Dee Cuniff, and John Hill. And I'm going to kind of step away and let you guys talk about it. So, Donnie, do you want to tell us why we're all here?
We are here because it is a beautiful day in San Diego while we're all gathered here at Comic-Con International. Once again, I just want to say thank you to everybody in the audience. You guys can't see them, but there's an entire room in front of us full of con attendees. I'd say give yourself some noise, but I guess they've all been given and you can't hear them over their masks. Yeah, thanks for being here. I don't know what to say. Certainly you guys by this point have seen the teasers and have seen the chatter online and seen the absolute silence from all of us and are probably wondering what the hell crossover is. I will tell you what crossover is to me. Crossover is the scariest goddamn book I have ever attempted to produce in my entire life, and that is why it is the most exciting thing that I've ever done. My teammates here will help me to try and elaborate and explain this thing to you because, again, it is insane. But the basics of it are, imagine Avengers Endgame, but as Cloverfield. And by that, I mean this. In January 11th of 2017, Jeff Shaw and I released a book called God Country. And Jeff and I were sitting around in my apartment then, such a long time ago, talking about, we had just done a signing, multiple signings here in Austin, and we were talking about and this is before I was at Marvel or anything, and we were talking about the nature of event books and how really the last story the story that's never been told in these like big summer event crisis secret war and huge mega summer event titles, the last story that's ever been told is the story of that guy on the sidewalk selling hot dogs and how utterly terrifying it is for that person. And so he started to think, and this is, again, mind you, 2017, and it has taken us this long to get our head around this. Crossover started life as an anti-event series. An event series told from the point of view of an everyday person. It then began to, as real life events in the world started to unfold and Jeff and I started talking about it more, it has evolved into something, it has evolved into a comic that I promise you have never seen anything like before. The premise, let's just get to that. What if one of those mega event, huge company, line-wide company, like across company crossovers became so huge and so epic that it literally, a portal opened up in the sky and it collapsed into our actual world, into the world in which you and I exist. And we follow a comic book shop employee and a band of kind of misfit characters, some of which are new characters, some of which may be familiar faces, as they try and kind of get, or not try to, but they kind of get swallowed up into this thing and try and get to the bottom of just how this thing happened. along the way, it's kind of a quest series in the same way that you would see like a Dark Tower series or a Lord of the Rings series as they go on their quest to try and get to the quote unquote crossover kind of ground zero, where everyone is. Along the way, they encounter again faces both familiar or rather not familiar, new faces, new characters, and perhaps characters from other realities that have collided into our own. It's a book that makes a lot of promises, and I hope that you will trust us enough to come back each month to see if we can actually pull this shit off. Because again, as I stated in the beginning, the most exciting thing about this book, and Jeff and I have had this conversation a million times, is that we have no fucking clue if this thing is actually going to work. But that's what's so exciting about it. And
that's how we know we're doing something good.
Yeah, I like that. I like to think so too. Because I remember a long time ago sitting down to write a story about an old man and a magical sword and thinking, is anybody gonna read this? Does anybody give a shit? Like, and so it has that same kind of weird magical energy around it. And it's taken us so long to kind of get our heads around it. And it's also informed by a lot of things now that, like, it's funny that coming from me, especially, to be saying that I'm writing an anti-event book, being as how I'm the guy who writes a lot of events at the Big Two. This book is not an attack on comic books. It is a celebration of what comic books can be. And as a celebration of what the art form can be, because at its core, it has a lot of things to say, and it has a lot of layers to it, meaning that if you want to come for a fun story and for just something for escapism and fun, that's absolutely there for you. If you want to start peeling back the layers of this book and see what we're really talking about and seeing the metaphors that are in the book about things that are going on today, that's there for you too. I mean, the idea that we're essentially following a bunch of creator-owned characters trying to survive in a world where everything around them is dominated by superheroes, speaks volumes about our need as independent artists to kind of make a stake and be loud, try and be as loud as the loudest Marvel and DC book out there, in a space that at Image that allows us the freedom to do whatever the we want, so yeah, it's crazy, guys. Am I getting anywhere close to describing what the this book is about?
Well,
yeah, definitely. I think
oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, like, when you called me to tell me the concept like 3 years ago. Yeah. And I was like, I didn't really get it at first. It's like a lot of the concepts were like really out there, hadn't been done before. And it just sounded like such a big thing. It's like, how is this going to translate into something that's actually readable from the start? And after, going through this first issue and into the second, it works. That's my opinion. I know you don't know if it's going to work or not. I think it works really well, and it's cool too, because it's like, it's a great concept. We're seeing a snippet of this world, and I think one of the other cool aspects of it is the techniques being used it from a visual standpoint.
Absolutely.
You haven't seen it. You haven't seen anything like this before. It's really different.
Yeah.
And as we're going to go along in the story too, we're going to start seeing a lot of really different stuff in there that I think people are going to be scratching their heads.
Yeah, I think that's worth touching on. I was just going to say, D, from a technical standpoint, you've had to handle you've had to do so much storytelling on your end for the coloring of this book, because the book is so much colored like our world, right? But then there's certain pieces of it that, like, do you want to elaborate on like what I'm?
Well, I don't know how far you're going to let me elaborate on, but
yeah, there's certain pieces of it that you have to color differently, because there are elements in the book that don't come from our world.
Yeah, well, I think you told me about this. I think about 2 or 3 years ago as well. One night after a convention. Yeah, and I was thinking about it for like 2.5 years and formulating ideas and I had actually seen the art at that stage, and I didn't know where Jeff was going with it, but it was like when the first few pages arrived in, it was like, yes, this is exactly how I pictured it. And those first, I don't know, 5 or 6 pages that we were working on, they took a long time, because we were trying to create a visual language that we could, you could point to something in your script and say, do it this way. And I would know what you meant, and you would know that I'd be able to pull out that idea, because there's so many different kind of things we're playing with. We've got, is it going to be in black and white? Is it full color? Is it line art? Is it other?
Right.
So it's every page is mentally challenging, but it's a great challenge. It's, when a page comes in, it's like, oh, how am I going to deal with this one? So
when I see, because when I say, like, I genuinely, like, you're not, you when you read this book, you're going to see things that you've literally never seen before done in a comic book, and not just in. I mean, look, I'll just say this. I mean, sorry, I'm getting a delivery. This is how we know we're not really at San Diego Comic-Con, because the postman just came and dropped something off. Well, you know what? Why don't I stop talking about it? And we have some pages to show. So why don't we show people a little bit about what it looks like, and what crossover looks like, and what the actual literal what would it look like if a giant summer, Marvel DC, whatever, the giant crossover erupted into the middle of our world. So why don't we show some art right now? So as you can see in there, D is having to absolutely distinguish between our world and that world, whatever that world is, and whatever is contained in there, and whatever, shall I say, gets loose from there, and it begins to interact with our very real people. So yeah, Jeff, I mean, do you want to talk about like putting together this book? And like, because I know that like Jeff, when you and I talked about it, I remember months would go by and we thought we knew what it was, and then I would call you and you'd be like, where the fuck did all this come from? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're getting out of, like, this is getting out of control.
Oh yeah, it was out of control from the get-go.
Yeah.
But we've yeah, it's been I know I was just as daunted by you, but excited by the scope of it, and the fact that, you know, we were taking on something that had I've never seen before in a comic book. But yeah, how to do that was yeah, it took longer than I expected to even wrap my head visually around what we were doing. And this, yeah, when you I got the first script, you know, you'd taken it in such a cool, you I think managed to wrangle it in and wrap it and then give us a cast of characters that really showcased and allowed us to get into this world. But visually, yeah, it was definitely a challenge, especially, you know, working with D, whose colors are just bonkers. They're so perfect. I think we got it to the perfect place. It wasn't overnight. We had to bounce things back and forth and a lot and just to you know, visualize this vocabulary that we were kind of creating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was exciting and fun, and that's, like I said, that's how I know it's a good thing, because if or an awful thing, but I think it's going to be exciting.
Either which way, it's going to be. I promise you, either which way, it is going to be worth your time and worth your $3 every issue. Yeah. I promise. Issue. It's an ongoing series. I'll say that. And Jeff, I will say this. I have, in the history, Jeff and I have been working together now for about 10 years. And issue 6 of our first arc has a sequence in it that I don't think I have ever been crueler towards Jeff. When I'm not going to tell you what it is, but issue 6 as one of the more, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, one of the more epic and I would argue historic sequences in comic book history in it. And that being said, I did want to touch upon really quick what Jeff said, because it does have this, the book does have this very human element to it. You know, because in the same, I was inspired a little bit by, you know, by the Leftovers, right? In the same way that the Leftovers is about this giant event that happened, but we kind of get glimpses of it, but then it's about how you live in that world now. You know, it's about like how that thing has affected the world. So like in the world of crossover, how does the idea that the notion of fiction has now kind of died, when every fictional character that you can ever think of is here in our world? You know, how does that affect, you know, society? How does that affect the notion of the comic book store? You know, that's you know, people are you know, I mentioned earlier in the book that, or in the panel, that you know we see the crossover as if it were Cloverfield, as if it was a horror zone, because that's what it would be. you know, because in these big epics, you know, the superheroes never stop and explain to the normal common man why everyone is fighting. For everyone like you and me, it's horrifying. It's terrifying, you know? And so what does that do to the notion of heroes in this world? You know, is it still cool to walk down the street wearing a Superman shirt when Superman, you know, and Batman and Iron Man and all these characters erupted into the middle of the world and destroyed an entire city during their fight in our world? Like, you know, is it cool to be, you know, like a fan of those characters, to look up to those characters? You know, it fundamentally changes the laws that govern the entire society, because when the notion of fiction gets shattered, well, then so does the notion of reality, you know? And there's some people like our main characters who still believe, and who still believe that these entities, that they're here for a reason, that they must be here for a reason, and that this thing, you know, can be something good. They are, you know, to use the term, they are some of the last true believers, you know, in a world that hates and fears them, you know, because for the most of the rest of the world, this thing that happened was, you know, an atom bomb, you know. So Crossover is a book that is, you know, an event book like an atom bomb. And I think that that's kind of what we were going for in that cover that we showed.
So that actually brings up a good point, because you guys, like, this book has a lot of themes that are very relevant to what's going on right now. Do you guys want to talk about it? Like, you know, there's a lot going on here. Are there like certain themes that you want to talk about that would get people interested?
Well, certainly for me, you know, I touched upon the idea that, like, the notion of creator-owned books, you know, trying to survive in a world dominated by you know, big two titles is certainly something. But also the idea that, and I'll just say this as apolitically as I can, doesn't matter which side of any of this that you stand on, but the idea of watching from afar as the powers that be endlessly fight amongst each other in the name of protecting you while ignoring you, is certainly something that is hard to miss in this book. And I think that when you read the first issue, you will see that you know, the people from this world, you know, I don't want to give too much away, but I'll say this, you know, it wasn't just a bunch of superheroes who got brought over during the crossover, the event as it's called. There were normal people too, like citizens just from over there, right? And they are, I don't want to spoil too much, but they are incredibly persecuted for being other, for being not of one of us. And that is a major theme that runs through the book as well. The notion of, you know, the notion of, God, it's so hard to talk about it without spoiling things. One of our, the crossover, like where the portal opened up and kind of like merging happened, took place in Colorado, and it's now like a demilitarized zone. And you know, one of our characters, our main character, whose name is Ellie, she had to get evacuated from there, and in the process lost a lot. And so, you know, one more of the themes of it is about trying to find your real family and about trying to get back home. There is a lot of the more I write it, there is so much of like a Wizard and of Oz kind of a fable to this whole thing of a band of kind of misfit characters trying to go and solve this grand mystery of this other world, while along the way bumping into familiar faces from other realities that may have happened to have crashed into our reality and our book.
Are you talking about other image characters? Are you allowed to say?
The book's called Crossover for a reason.
Don't give it away. Come on.
I'm not saying shit. I'm not saying shit. I will say, though, that the main character is a retailer. So if you're a retailer, as I once was way back in the day, let me just give you a hot tip that issue 6 is something that you're going to want to pay attention to. Issue 1, 2, please, as well. I'm excited to. It's funny because we came up with this idea before I was at Marvel, before Jeff Shaw was at Marvel, and it was just this kind of a not simple story, but now that I am in the position that I'm in, being able to take the knowledge of having written a few events and continuing to write events at Marvel and using those same skills and that same kind of widescreen, enormous, insane breadths of characters and continuity and explosiveness, and bring that to an image independent world has been exhilarating and terrifying, and I just goddamn hope you guys like it, because it is it's insane. You'll I think once retailers, you're all going to be getting the first full issue way before it comes out. So I highly suggest you tell your reader base at your shop what it is that we intend to pull off in this thing. And readers, once you read issue 1, I think you'll get a sense of what we're trying to do here. Other than that, I think I've probably already said too much.
Well, at the risk of spilling too much, can each of you guys just kind of talk about what you're the most excited about this? Because we're trying to basically sell this book that hasn't come out yet, and we don't want to have too many spoilers. So yeah. What is it that you are the most proud of or the most excited, or what makes this project the most special for you?
I'll go.
Do it, Dee.
Yeah. I think pretty much every page so far has been a challenge. And, as a colorist, you can find yourself getting into a rut where you're just doing the same thing page after page. This is what it looks like. This is the costumes, and you're running through a book. But with this one, pretty much every page I'm having to really stop and think about how I'm approaching the page. And, the time it took to get to a stage where we were all comfortable with how I was handing back the pages, because there was a lot of to and fro with oh, this doesn't look right, can we try this, can we try that? And it took us a couple of months to get to a stage where we were. Yeah.
Well, because we're begin, and again, that's not. I don't want Dee to sell himself short. That's not because Dee's not doing a great job. Dee's doing a phenomenal job. In fact, it's some of the best work I've ever seen him do. It's because we're literally doing things in this book that have just never been done, and so like there's no guidelines. There's no like. I'm writing things in scripts where I'm telling Dee, like, I know that this has never been done and I don't really know how to do it, but we're just going to have to give it, a couple different tries until we nail it down, and then John Hill will jump in and say, like, hey, maybe I have a solution for how to pull that off, because there is so much storytelling. It's not, this book, amongst almost, I think, any other book I've ever done, is the most visually collaborative book that I've ever done, because Jeff and I are constantly talking. John Hill and I are constantly talking. Dee and I are constantly talking, and John's talking to Dee, and Jeff's talking to John, and everyone, because we are doing things in this book that we've never seen done, and so we don't have a roadmap of how to do it. We're like kind of inventing on the fly, and that's, I think, Dee, I don't want to speak for you, but that is kind of the excitement, because it's fun, but it's also scary,
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's because it's so challenging that it's fun. That every page is a challenge, and I get to flex muscles I've never used before when I'm trying out the pages. So, and as you said, it's fully collaborative, and it's probably one of the most collaborative books I've ever worked on. It's not just Jeff telling me to do something, or me saying, here's what I'm going to do, and not taking feedback on it. And then John comes in and is like, here, try this way. And so there's so much feedback, and there's we're all working together on this, and it just feels really collaborative. And I think
it really feels like the most. I've always described me and my collaborators as gangs, and a gang mentality of like my team's gonna fucking destroy your team kind of thing. And I think the Crossover Gang, which, by the way, I should mention, and I've neglected this entire time, our cover was colored by Dave Stewart. So very, very huge shout out, and he did a beautiful job on issue 1's cover. Dave Stewart also did the first cover of God Country. So the whole gang is back in that way. And I should mention our story editor on the book is a young upstart young man named Mark Wade. Because a book of this magnitude, I had to call in for some backup. I needed someone that I could call and be like, hey, am I losing my fucking mind? Is this insane? And Mark, being the encyclopedia of all of comics knowledge that he is, has been a godsend for helping out in that way. John, Jeff, you guys got any final words before we wrap it up? I know we probably all have signings to go to, or panels we got to get to.
It's just in general, starting to work on this, actually dig in. I mean, we've been talking about it, throwing stuff around for years now, but actually starting to dig in really reminded me of when we were working on God Country, because doing that book, that's definitely one of my all-time favorite projects that I've worked on. And it's like coming home, working on this book with the guys, and everybody's at the top of their game. We're all collaborating, and that's, the whole collaboration thing is definitely a huge, huge part of this, and it shows in the book too.
It's the best part of making comics. Yeah.
Everything ties together in this. You don't have anything that kind of sticks out as not really, oh, okay, here's where a production person came in and did something, or you don't see any of that. This is a solid story. And I mean, kind of the way you're describing things, Donnie, it sounds kind of scary. It sounds like, oh my God, this is just too big, but it's not. It's a big concept. And you're like, and I hate using this term, but it's boots on the ground. It's you're seeing it from your viewpoint. for the most part.
From a very human aspect, like
exactly.
I was told a piece of writing advice a long time ago that I had to instill in this is the bigger you go, the smaller you should focus. And so the concept of crossover is the biggest, craziest, loudest thing that I've ever done, which is saying something. And so I think we all purposely went small in the actual storytelling of it and go as small as possible in the motivations of our characters and try and make it as personal and as human as possible, because it really is a story about humanity trying to survive in a world of the impossible, and in a world in which fiction is real, anything is possible.
Yeah, I was gonna say roughly, not as beautifully as you put it, but roughly the same thing. Some of the things I like, working stories that I like telling the most, and that I've been fortunate enough to tell with Donnie and John, and he have been, I think the best stories are human stories. You know? And I think sometimes that gets lost in the chaos of, especially in comic books. So you can do everything, and occasionally the people get lost in that. And I the most exciting thing for me about this story has been connecting with humanity, with ourselves, with relatable people, with relatable feelings, and how we would react in any different number of crazy situations that would happen in a comic book. But connecting with the reader and myself as an artist, feelings and motivations and what have you. But I think the humanity of this story is a big part of it. And I think that's
in the same way that people who have read our book God Country, God Country has these big huge backdrops of giant Kirby gods and giant swords, but you read it, it's not about giant swords, it's not about Kirby gods, it's about this father and son story. Crossover has an even bigger backdrop, an almost infinite backdrop of crazy. And as just as God Country is not really about any of that, is about one girl and her friends trying to find home and trying to find a place that they belong in a world where nothing makes sense anymore, but yeah, but I was gonna say, but it's also things that you never thought you would ever see printed on a page. The first issue included. It's not a navel gazing memoir. It's not like anything. It's crossover. That's what it is.
Awesome. Well, we should probably wrap this up. Let's go down the line and tell people where to find you and to follow you, so that when this gets announced and when stuff starts coming out, everyone can go and buy it.
I'm at Don Cates at twitter.com. I have not really been, by the time you're watching this, you've probably seen me talking about crossover a lot, and been putting out teasers and being very frustrating that I'm not answering any of your questions about them. So I apologize about that. And you can follow me at Don Cates. Really quick, I want to give a shout out to our moderator, Miss Megan Cates, otherwise known publishing wise as Megan Hutchison.
Yeah. My legal name. That is correct.
Who may or may not have a special announcement of her own at Image forthcoming, including yours truly. Meg, where can we find you?
I'm at blackem_art on all social media. And yes, we do have a book actually with this exact same team, except for you, Jeff. Sorry, I took your job on this one.
Yeah, you're not allowed.
Sorry?
No, that's okay. Yeah, Jeff's got plenty on his plate.
Yeah, exactly.
D, John?
Uh-oh, D's muted.
Yeah.
D, you're muted.
There you go.
At Dzoid on Twitter and nowhere else.
Yeah, and if you want to read any book that D does, pretty much pick up literally almost any book in any comic book store. D is probably coloring it. and I should also say, if you want to look at any of John's work, walk into almost any comic book store and pick up almost any comic book for the design of it. John has probably done that. John, where can we find you, buddy?
I'm John J. Hill at both Twitter and Instagram. I don't do Facebook. And yeah, this is gonna be fun, guys.
Yeah, man. And I would ask people, I would ask Jeff where to find him, but he never tweets and he never does anything.
No, Instagram though. You can get
yeah. You can follow him on Instagram. I literally set up Jeff Shaw's Twitter account for him the night we came up with this book. Do you remember that, Jeff?
Yeah.
I literally made you your own Twitter account sitting next to you on the couch. I was like, I'm gonna make you a goddamn Twitter because when this book comes out, you're gonna promote this. And he's probably not going to, but that's okay. I will. I'll take care of it. I will always happy to be Jeff Shaw's hype man. But yeah, follow Jeff Shaw on Instagram. Where?
It's at GE Shaw. I didn't get the Jeff Shaw handle. I was late to the game on that one too. So yeah. Yeah, GE Shaw.
All right, cool.
Yeah. And on Twitter, I am just, my Twitter, funny enough, I just became a retweet for stuff that we're working on. So it's an extension of your Twitter account.
Yeah, cool.
More or less.
Well, hey, thank you guys so much all for joining us. I really, really, really hope that you will trust us enough to go and pick up crossover #1 when it comes out. Whether you love it or you hate it or you think it's stupid or too insane, I promise you it's worth your time. And I hope that you're all safe, and I love you guys. And thanks for supporting us and for supporting comics and for supporting local comic book shops and for supporting Image Comics. And we'll see you soon.